of Electrical Engineering at IIT Chennai and head of TLC Teaching and Learning Center. We are looking forward for your session and over to you, sir.
Okay, thank you. Um, I should get the name. Your name is
Gopika.
Gopika. Thank you, Gopika.
Thank you.
Yeah. So let us get on with the with today's session. I am just recapitulating the recipe for effective and efficient teaching, which I presented towards the end of the previous session. Before I do that, I just want to confirm that I am audible and I am visible. Is that fine?
Yes, sir. Yes,
Yes, sir.
Okay. So our recipe for effective and efficient teaching was as follows. We said that first you should start preparation for a course by designing appropriate questions for assignments, tutorials, and if possible, even tests and quizzes. Then we should convert the assignment questions into learning outcome. Sometimes teachers have asked me whether it is better to first write learning outcomes and then prepare the questions for assignments, tutorials, and so on. Yes, both ways are possible. That is, you first write the learning outcomes of your course and then you associate each learning outcome with a set of questions. And then you decide out of those questions which will be given for assignment, which will be given for tutorials, and which will be given for tests or quizzes. You can do it that way. It turns out, in practice, I have found first designing the questions and then converting those questions into learning outcomes turns out to be easy. Okay. If people have any more questions on this point, we will take questions. First, let me just recapitulate the various steps. Then I'm going to take up the steps and discuss in detail. After we have designed the learning outcomes, we said that we should organize our teaching around learning outcomes. So for instance, I said that you go to a class, you write down the learning outcome for that class on the board or project a slide with the learning outcome, and then you start giving the explanations and derivations or whatever related to that learning outcome. So that is where we come to the next step, that is the content delivery. Here we said we have to bother about three things. Pay due attention to your body language and how you speak, use analogies in explanation, and judiciously use the blackboard and the PowerPoint. The next important point in our recipe was that we must test and quiz students frequently and provide feedback on their answers to questions. Here I pointed out that testing or quizzing frequently doesn't necessarily imply that each such question should be graded. So whatever questions we throw at the class, even those questions are included here in testing or quizzing of students. So all questions are not graded, okay? So students are not penalized for wrong answers of all questions. However, certain tests are there. Hello?
Hello, excuse me, sir.
Yes.
Your screen is now the video on a. What do you want to display? You are displaying the PowerPoint or the video?
PowerPoint.
Oh, we are
but
not
we are seeing that video, which
Please
is.
come on, stop presenting and go to the PowerPoint again.
Okay, I stop. No, so what are you
Stop.
seeing?
Video.
We are
Video.
seeing that part of video.
Still picture of the video.
You please stop sharing that video and share your PowerPoint screen.
Oh, you mean you are not seeing PowerPoint at all? So
No, sir.
We are seeing the video still only.
okay.
That's the first page.
Okay, just 1 minute.
Stop sharing. Again, go to stop sharing and.
Oh, that is why when I asked in the beginning whether you are able to see the slide, people said that yes, they are able to see. Is it clear now?
Now it is
yes, now it is clear.
Oh, okay. So then I have to start again. Okay, so quickly.
Yeah.
So I am recapitulating the recipe for effective and efficient teaching. First step, I said in preparation of any course is to design questions for assignments, tutorials, tests and quizzes. Then we should write learning outcomes for the course. So you can convert the questions into learning outcomes. For instance, a set of 4 or 5 questions may correspond to achieving one learning outcome. So if you have say 40 to 50 questions for a course, which can be picked up from textbooks, okay, at the end of each chapter you have some questions given there, or you can set your own questions. So those questions, so suppose you have 40 to 50 questions, so you convert about 4 to 5 questions into a learning outcome, then you have about 8 to 10 learning outcomes for your course. Now once you have, I also quickly mentioned that you can first write learning outcomes, and for every learning outcome you can have corresponding questions. So you could operate that way also. That is, first giving the learning, designing the learning outcomes, and then deciding what questions should be asked to test the learning outcomes. But as I've said, it turns out that in practice it may be easier to do the other way. That is, first you identify all the questions that the student should be able to answer after going through your course. And then you can convert those questions into your learning outcomes, right? It is somewhat like, let me give you an analogy. Those who have done research, they know that it is easier to write the abstract of a paper after writing the paper. The reverse process would be you first write the abstract of the paper and then you write the entire paper. So from your practical experience, let me get some response on this. Which is easier? Okay, I will take the response through chat instead of going by video. Which is easier? Is it easier to write the abstract after writing the paper, or it is easier to write the abstract first and then write the paper? I want some responses. Using the chat, anybody has responded? I think someone there is going to take the response from the chat and then speak out. Am I right?
Yes.
Yes, yes.
I'm Kylie. I'm going to help you with that.
Yeah.
We are getting a lot of responses. So Manju has responded abstract after paper. Most people feel that abstract should be written after the paper.
Okay, good. So that is why, in the same way, I'm saying it may be easier.
Except for someone from St. Thomas College, the admin at St. Thomas College writes writing paper and then abstract. Okay, he also feels the same.
Yeah. So exactly. So I am saying in the similar way, it is easier to first identify the questions which your student should be able to answer. Okay, I have also given you how you can identify the questions, because somebody may say, how can I set 40 or 50 questions before, deciding what all the content I should present to the student. So I have given you the hint that you usually identify a book for any course. You can take the questions which are given at the end of the chapter, and you can pick up those questions which you think your student should be able to answer. Okay, and once you have formed a list of such questions, they can be easily converted into learning outcomes. Okay. Now you are going to organize all your teaching around learning outcomes. So when you go to the class, you will write the learning outcome for the class. If you are, there may be more than one learning outcome for a class. It can happen. So you write the first learning outcome, and then you complete discussion of that. Then you write the next learning outcome, and then you complete the discussion, right? That is the way you are going to teach. This is called organizing content around learning outcomes. Now, so when you deliver your content, right, you have to pay due attention to your body language and how you speak. You should use analogies in explanations, and you must use the PowerPoint and Blackboard judiciously. So I'm going to discuss in detail these points. First, I'm only recapitulating. Then I said that you must test or quiz students frequently. And when they give a wrong answer, you must provide feedback. Why they have gone wrong. This feedback is very, very important. As I mentioned in my introductory lecture, that is the first session, that some experts said that actually teachers are being paid to provide the feedback to the student. Feedback is that important. apart from designing good questions, the next important thing is providing feedback to the students why they are going wrong. Okay. You can just take an analogy for this. Supposing somebody is learning how to cycle, right? And what do? If you are the teacher, you basically provide the person a feedback. You know, you are not balancing because of this reason, that reason, and all that. It is because of the feedback from you that the person learns. This is true for other things also. Let's take swimming, for example. Even there, it is the same thing, right? Those who want to learn swimming, they must know how to beat their hands and feet. And then you are standing there mainly to tell them why they are going wrong. Okay. Without such feedback, people don't learn. So often, teachers are not aware of the value of feedback. They think that grading questions, answer papers of the students is sufficient, giving them marks. And supposing a person comes to know that I got 40%. Unfortunately, just knowing that I have got 40% doesn't always help the student to improve his grade, unless you tell why he has got 40% or why he has lost 60%. The next important thing is to seek feedback on your teaching from students and colleagues. This is also important. I'm going to discuss how we can seek feedback from what are the various ways in which we can seek feedback. Finally, a teacher must appear to the students as competent and caring. Both these dimensions are important, competence and caring. Okay. So now I am going to take up designing good questions. Prasad has discussed in detail about learning outcomes. It's a very important topic. It was covered in 2 sessions. So writing learning outcomes, I am not going to cover. So I am going to start by talking about questions. How can we design good questions? What is the meaning of good questions? What is the meaning of a good assignment set, good question set for assignments? As we will see, it is not possible to state whether a particular question is good or not, but it is possible to give your comment on whether a set of questions is good. So you can say that set of questions is good if you can show that the set of questions covers various levels of Bloom's taxonomy of thinking. This is what we are going to now discuss in detail a little bit more. Okay, so let us discuss that. To design good questions, a teacher should know about levels of thinking. During learning outcome discussion, people are already exposed to various levels of thinking. Let's get some feedback on this. What are the various levels of thinking? Can someone write on the chat? As soon as you get one response, you please read out, then I will go to the next point. What are the various levels of thinking?
Dr. Seema Menon writes intellectual rational.
Sorry?
Dr. Seema Menon writes intellectual rational.
No, I'm talking about levels of thinking, Bloom's taxonomy.
Okay. Dr. C.P. Anita Devi writes understanding.
That is one level. I want them to write all the levels that they know of. So which means basically I want at least 3 to 4 words. Actually, there are 6 words because 6 levels, but you know, maybe 3 to 4 levels if they identify using words.
Deepa C.S. writes remember,
correct,
apply, understand.
Yes.
Rekha
Okay.
S. writes cognitive thinking.
No, cognitive thinking is not correct. The other one was fine. Remember, understand, and apply. Am I right?
Yes.
That was, though we have said that generally we should not use the term understanding, but still it is fine. Any other answers?
Lot of them have written remember, understand, remember, apply, understand, cognitive thinking, analyze, evaluate, apply.
Correct. Analyze is correct, but cognitive thinking is not correct. Cognitive thinking, you are talking about various levels of cognitive thinking. That is what. So cognitive thinking itself is not a level. Okay.
Celine Samuel has written create, thinking, apply.
Yes.
Create, thinking, analyze, evaluate.
Correct. So those are also levels. Fine. So let me show here 4 levels out of usually there are 6, but let me, to simplify matters, let me show 4 levels: memory, application, critical thinking, and creativity. Okay. So there are different words which are used for different levels. Okay. For instance, remember is the same as memory. Okay. That is the lowest level of thinking. Then you have application. Application, fortunately, there are not many variations. People use this level application. Then critical thinking. Okay. What are the equivalent terms for critical thinking, this level? Anybody? Yesterday, Prasad discussed levels, I think.
Analyze.
Correct.
Analyze.
Correct. Analysis is a part of critical thinking. You are perfectly right. Sorry?
Evaluate.
Yeah. Okay. So my suggestion is it will be a good assignment, right? Everyone, please put Google search critical thinking in Google search. Just put right now, please let them do it if they can. And let someone read out what is the definition of critical thinking.
To analyze a situation based on what they have learned, understood.
The objective is an evaluation of an issue in order to form a judgment.
So one way of defining critical thinking, it is an ability to look at a problem or an issue from various angles and then learning to discard those angles or those approaches which will not lead you to the solution and choose the right approach. Let me repeat, ability to look at an issue from different angles. Okay, and ability to judge which of these angles or which of these approaches will lead you to the solution. That is where evaluation also comes. Okay, so this ability, it includes analysis and so on, but basically ability to look at an issue from different angles. So we are going to now do an assignment ourselves so that we know all these levels. Okay, and finally creativity. About creativity, there is no doubt. Everybody uses this term. So let me give you now a question which you have to solve. And this is the question. Make 5 squares of equal size out of a single large square using scissors only. Cut and paste is allowed. I will give you half a minute to please look at this slide and read it for yourself. Then I will further discuss about it. Okay, now let me give you some idea of what this problem is, because sometimes even after reading 2 or 3 times people do not interpret the statement properly, the problem statement. Let me illustrate this, what exactly the statement means, by changing it and making this a little simpler. Supposing I change this number 5, instead of saying make 5 squares of equal size, I will say make 4 squares. I am changing 5 to 4. Then what is your solution? Can people please do it on their sheet of paper, and then any one of you can show it? How will you make 4 squares of equal size out of a single large square using scissors only? You don't have to use a scissor and all that, just using a paper and pen. If you can show how you will cut or whatever to make 4 squares of equal size from a single large square.
Fold it and
yeah,
crisscross folding.
Yeah, somebody can show it on a piece of paper. You just draw using a pen and show how I will make 4 squares of equal size. As soon as I get at least 2 people to respond. Yeah, I can see that. Yes. Can everyone see that? Can everyone see what is being shown?
No, no. Who is that? Please pin yourself, then we can see you. What's the person's name, sir?
No,
Dr. Mohan.
it is not possible because long. Say this is in PowerPoint
Mohan,
mode.
sir, please stop.
It's being shared. PowerPoint is being shared, so you cannot see what the other person is showing. Okay.
Oh, you mean I should?
Unless you are not, you should stop sharing and let the people,
okay.
let the other person.
I have stopped sharing. I have stopped sharing. Is that okay?
Yes. Yes.
Now let us let someone show that.
Now we can see.
Yes, we can.
Everybody can see that. So you can see that you have drawn one vertical line and one horizontal line, right? Through the middle of the paper. That is how you are making four squares. Okay. So now in this particular effort, you have not tried, you don't have to paste anything. You just cut, right? You take a paper and scissor cut. Now the question, however, says, let me go back to sharing. The question says cut and paste is allowed. So where is pasting required? So for dividing into 4 equal squares, you don't need pasting. That is fine. But for other numbers, you may need. For example, supposing I change this number 5 to 2 squares, make 2 squares of equal size out of a single large square. Please try this and show me how you will make 2 squares of equal size from a single large square. I will stop sharing so that you can show. You can try it and then you can show. How you will make 2 squares of equal size. So I suggest as soon as somebody feels he or she has a solution, you put on the chat that I have a solution, right? So that we at least know, okay, somebody has got a solution. Then you can show later on. At least you can, put the sentence.
Someone says.
So you can see that by changing that number, now the question has become a little more difficult. It is testing higher level of thinking just by changing that number of things, right? So we are trying to discuss how we can frame questions at different levels of thinking. Okay. Yeah. Somebody said something on the chat.
Yes, sir. Someone
Ah.
has posted a picture of how two squares are made by
What's the
drawing four triangles.
How do you get four triangles?
Miss Sarita K. Nair, please talk. Sarita K. Nair, hello.
Hello.
Hello, Sarita K. Nair, please talk.
Yes, draw two diagonals. Hello.
Yeah.
Draw two diagonals and then we will get four triangles.
Good.
And attach two triangles together so you get a square. So it's total two
Yes,
squares.
yes, that's right. So actually it is something like this. Let me just see if I show it from my end, maybe it is easier. So you draw the two diagonals, then it gets okay. So everybody is able to see this,
Yes.
right? So now I have put number 1 on two triangles, and similarly I will put number 2 on the other two triangles, right? Number 2. Now I am going to put the two number 1 triangles and make a square. So like this. Okay, you can see that I have removed that number 1 triangle and pasted it. That is why you need that pasting. Pasting means not one over the other, but from the side. The two triangles are pasted on their sides. Okay, so I have got one square. Similarly, I can paste the two triangles number 2 and get another square, right? So that is how I have divided one square into two equal squares. Now you can see that this is a little bit of a more difficult problem than dividing into 4 squares. Now you can make it even more interesting, right? I will give you a few minutes time. Please try dividing. Now you understand meaning of cut and paste, right? So paste means side by side. Okay, side by side like this, not one over the other. So now if you want to divide one square into 5 equal squares, please try for few minutes. Let us see what approach do you take. Instead of 4 squares, now you have 5 squares. Cut and paste is allowed. And as soon as somebody feels that he or she has a solution, you please put on the chat that I have a solution. Then one can then see what is the solution that is being suggested.
No messages until now.
Sorry, what did you say?
No messages until now, sir. Nobody has written any.
Yeah, that is fine. It takes a little while, but it is worth it because then you will appreciate levels of thinking. That is what we want to do. Unless we go through this, we will not appreciate what is the meaning of levels of thinking, various higher levels and so on. It's not that easy problem. usually when we do face-to-face session, we even allow people to discuss. Now here that may be difficult because each person is alone, right? So that takes sometimes longer time, but doesn't matter. At least one solution, if people feel they have, let us see, then we will move forward. Yeah, I can see somebody putting up. That is Simi Thomas. Maybe you have to slightly move the paper in a way in which it covers the. No, it is not. I can see that you are dividing vertically 5 pieces, you can see, but horizontally how many divisions? You can tell in words. Simi? 2 halves, is it? Okay, maybe I will try to show what she is doing, and then let us see how she feels that you can make 5 squares. So I think this is what, okay, somebody else is showing. Simi is showing some other picture. That is interesting. Okay. Yeah, so let us see. Can you please tell which are the 5 squares here? Can you please unmute, Simi? You are able to see your thing, but they are not able to hear you. Unmute yourself.
Simi, who is that?
I could see her. I could see whatever she showed. Was it visible, Manju?
No, yeah, now
Yeah.
she is there.
No,
Only
no,
if she speaks, we can see her.
No,
It
this is Sujata.
Dr.
I think.
Sujata.
Yeah.
Sujata.
Sir, this is the stick 1, 2, 3, 4, and these 2 pieces together fit.
Can you please move it a little
Towards the
close?
screen, we cannot see the lines.
We are
Can
not
you
able to see
please?
the line.
1, 2, 3, 4, and this piece together fit. This piece.
No, you are saying you are pasting one over the other.
No. Side by side. These 2 side by side. All these 4 are independent.
All these 4 independent. But
Yes,
how do you get
yes.
the 5th one? It is not clear. Acha, first you
Fifth
divide.
one, half. Only
Okay.
half size.
Okay, you are saying
Then it will not be square.
you are saying you start with a square paper,
Yeah,
and you fold make 2 halves.
It is actually not exactly half.
Then how much is it?
So
Then it will not be a square.
That's the point.
try. We can measure, and I think so. We can do that.
So you have to say, how will you measure? Because only scissor is given to you. That's the question. How will you measure?
Actually, the 3rd piece should be half of the original, means half length.
Half length. No, so you can tell in words. You can tell in words. Let us say you have a square of size A. Each side is A. Okay.
Okay.
Each side is A.
So A by 2 should be the size of the 3rd piece. A by 2, so that 2 pieces. Third piece, small piece, no?
Correct. But if it is A by 2, then remaining is also A by 2. So only 2 pieces you have.
No, actually, it is not like that. So what I said is A is the size of this small piece, small square.
Okay. No. So let us start. Let us start with what is the size of your square first.
The original size.
Original size.
Is let us say A.
Suppose it is original one. Original size of the paper.
Is A.
Right. Huh. Then
Is A. Okay.
hmm.
So actually, let me think, and I will tell.
Yeah.
So
So you can see that it's anyone else? Simi had said something, but then again she.
Simi has said that cut into 5 parts and then divide in each in 4 parts and paste these 4 pieces side by side to make a square.
First divide into 5 parts. How to divide first into 5 parts? Just vertically strips, is it?
It says cut into 5 parts, then divide each into 4 parts and paste these 4 pieces side by side to make a square.
Let me see. I think I kind of try to, I know what she's saying. Perhaps let me draw it and show. Yeah, I think, is everybody able to see this? First you are saying divide 5 like this.
Yes.
Okay, now you further now you take each strip. I think what she's saying is this. Maybe what she's saying is this: each strip you divide into four parts like this. Am I right?
Yes.
And then paste side by side. Maybe she's saying like this. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Maybe this is what she means. You move the parts. Like, is this what, Simi, is this what you're saying? Okay,
Simi,
let's assume.
can you unmute?
Or you can even say on chat, yes.
Sir, Joseph Prince has drawn a diagram in the chat box.
Sorry?
Joseph Prince has given a picture in the chat box.
Okay, how is it? How can I can see it, is it?
Yes, if you just scroll up.
Oh, just 1 minute. I have to go to participants, am I right?
Yeah, no, you have to go to chat, the chat box.
Conversation. Conversation. Yes, I am going there. And who has shown?
Joseph Prince. There's a picture there.
Joseph.
At about 2:45.
Yeah. Yes. I'm able to see. Yes. Okay. Yeah, let me see that. This is a good approach. Now let us look at this. Everybody is able to see this. Okay. Everybody is able to see this.
Probably, sir.
Yeah. Or let me draw it and show to everybody what he's saying. Though here it is like this. Say he's showing something like this. Now everybody will be able to see this.
Yes, sir.
Manju, you are able to see, right? Yeah, but so here I think what they will say is that you have to combine 2 triangles and make 1 square, other 2 triangles make another square, then you have 4 triangles, from there again you make 2 squares, and finally you have a square inside. Okay, that's an interesting approach, but what you will find is the squares are not of the same size. Okay, the squares are not equal. Anyway, I think this much of thinking is sufficient. You can try this problem yourself. It is not an easy problem. All I am trying to show is how the same statement, by changing some data in the statement, your problem can be raised, thinking level can be raised higher and higher. So let me summarize what we learn from here. That is more important. Okay, rather than, apart from solving the puzzle itself, it is important to see what we learn. Okay, so you can try this. So what I want to say is this. This problem actually can be solved using Pythagoras or Baudhayana theorem. How do you solve this? It is as follows. Okay, suppose each side, I'm not going to give the entire solution. I'm just going to tell you. Suppose size of the square is A. That means the area of the square is A square. Okay. If you divide this area into 5 equal parts, each small square should have an area of A square by 5. Now, if each small square should have an area of A square by 5, that means side of the square should be how much? Let people answer this question. How much should be the size of the smaller square? Side of the smaller square?
A by root 5.
A by root 5. Right? A by root 5. So now, the crucial thing is how to realize this root 5. Okay, and using Pythagoras theorem, you can show that if you have a right angle triangle whose one side is 2 and another side is 1, then the hypotenuse will be how much? Right angle triangle, one side is 2, another side is 1. Then how much is the hypotenuse?
Root of 5.
It is root of 5. So this is how you can realize root of 5. This is the crucial hint to how to solve the problem. Okay. Now I will not give you the actual solution, how to cut and all that. You can try yourself. But let us see what are the various levels of thinking and how we can set questions at various levels of thinking. Now assume that students are taught Pythagoras theorem. More recently, research has shown that in fact in India, Baudhayana knew it earlier than Pythagoras. So you can even call it Baudhayana theorem. Some people say even Chinese knew it earlier. So yeah, there are other things, but that is aside. Now let us say we have taught statement and proof of the theorem to the student. You can set various questions to test the thinking of the student. First question can be, one question can be state and prove the theorem. Okay. Now can people respond? What level of thinking does this question test? You can respond on chat. State and prove the theorem. You have taught the statement and proof of the theorem to the student. In the exam, you are asking this question. State and prove the theorem. What is the level of thinking? Remember. Yes. Remember. So it is the lowest level of thinking you are testing. Indeed, this is not a problem at all, right? The word problem means anything that the student is not familiar with. Okay. So in that sense, it is not a problem at all because the student is already familiar with the statement and proof of the theorem. Now, you can set a different question, which is what is shown here. Next one. Using the theorem, divide a square piece of paper into 5 equal squares. Now, what level of thinking is it testing?
Apply.
Apply. Very good. Right? So it is testing application level. Here, what you are doing is you are giving a starting point of the problem, that is use the theorem that you have taught. And the end point, however, is not familiar to the student. You have to divide into 5 equal parts, a square into 5 equal squares. This goal, the student was not aware earlier. Okay, so that is unfamiliar. Starting point is told, so goal is not familiar. So this is application level. It is a problem, right? This question is a problem. Now you can reframe the question as shown in the third question here. Divide a square piece of paper into 5 equal squares. This is what I had asked you to do. You are not giving any hint that you must use Pythagoras theorem. Though you have taught the theorem and its proof, you are not giving any hint in the question that this theorem should be used. Now, what level of thinking is it testing?
Analyze.
Yeah, it can be analyze, or in my terms, it is critical thinking, right? Critical thinking. Why? Because you can see now, when you are asked to solve this problem, different people are trying different approaches. Some are dividing the paper vertically, right? Some are trying at an angle, and so on. Different approaches are being tried, right? But then you are coming, your realization is dawning on you that, oh no, this approach is not going to help, okay? Because I may get 5 equal parts, but each part may not be a square. In some other approach, I am getting 5 squares, but all squares are not of equal size, right? So you can see that here you are trying different approaches because starting point is not told to you, right? So in such a case, you will have to use even higher level thinking called critical thinking. You have to try different approaches, but as you are trying, you must also make a judgment whether that approach will lead you to the solution or not. Let me just give you a hint. If you want to divide into 5 equal squares, dividing the paper vertically, horizontally, this approach will not lead you to solution. Okay, this is something that one will have to realize quickly after trial and error, right? If a person realizes this quickly, you can say he is a good critical thinker. Okay. Now you can have even higher level. Formulate a question for testing levels of thinking. Now this is probably testing highest level of thinking, creativity. To formulate a question to test various levels of thinking, it is not at all an easy exercise. For example, now we have developed a question here dividing a square into different number of parts, 2 parts, 4 parts, 5 parts, and so on. Using this question, you can test levels of thinking of people. Okay. So formulation of good questions is not a easy exercise. It tests the highest level of thinking, namely creativity. So setting a good question paper, okay, setting a good assignment question set is not an easy task. Sometimes, you must have heard it being said that a teacher should be creative, right? How many of you have heard this statement, a teacher should be creative? Please reply on chat. If you have heard, you say yes. Let us see how many people say yes to this, that they have heard being told that teacher should be creative. You just have to say yes if you have heard in the chat. Someone tell me how many responses have come.
1, 2, 3, 4.
I am counting.
A lot.
Almost
Yes.
everyone saying yes.
Okay, good. So everyone says yes. Good, good. Now, let them respond. Where is creativity? Where should a teacher be creative? So this is one example. Setting good questions. Okay. This is where teacher has to be creative. We are going to discuss other areas also where creativity is involved. But this is where creativity is involved. Setting a good question set. Okay. It tests highest level of thinking. Let me give you a practical example of this. All of you know about the reputation of the joint entrance exam. Now, how long does it take to set a question paper of the joint entrance exam, JEE, for admission into IITs? So usually about 10 faculty members will be put together in a room, or rather in a place for 10 days. So 10 faculty members will gather and will be isolated for 10 days. And for 10 days, they will all be only concentrating on setting questions for the JEE. If you assume that totally the paper is 100 marks, right? Then on average, each faculty member is setting 10 marks questions basically, right? Because there are 10 faculty members. So you can see, to set a good 10-mark question, I'm not saying a single question, but totally questions for 10 marks, they are taking 10 days. Okay, so you can see how much of thinking is involved in that. So this is just to convince you that setting a good question paper set, good set of questions, is test highest level of thinking in a teacher. Okay, this is one area where teacher can be creative. So I have just put the levels of thinking against these questions in this slide. Previous slide had only the questions. Now here you can see that state and prove the theorem. It tests memory. Using the theorem, divide a square piece of paper into 5 equal squares. Test application. Divide a square piece of paper into 5 equal squares. No hint of the theorem. Test critical thinking. And formulate a question for testing levels of thinking. It tests creativity. Okay. Now, the next step of a recipe. Okay, so now I hope people have understood what is the meaning of a good question. So, as I've said, you cannot decide whether a particular question is good or not, because supposing all questions in an assignment or in the exam are at application or critical thinking level, then what will happen? Students will run away. They will never like that course, because it will be very difficult to solve those questions, and students will get demotivated. That is why a good question paper set is a good set of questions is that set where you have, say, maybe 20% of the question testing memory, right? Or maybe 20, even 30% maybe. Then another 40% or 50% at application level, and maybe 10% at critical thinking level, right? Because critical thinking, as you have seen, it takes a long time. Dividing a square piece of paper into 5 equal squares, it's not going to be easy. You can try it and see how long it takes. Each of you can try. That is a critical thinking level question. So maybe in a course, supposing you have 50 assignment questions, you can have a 2 or 3 at critical thinking level. Okay, and you can even do the following. You can probably make it optional. You can say that those students who want to answer can answer these questions and discuss their solutions. This way you can identify students in your class who may be deeply interested in your subject. Okay, everybody may not be deeply interested. So that is why if you set a tough question paper, people will get demotivated. But if you set an easy question paper, if 70-80% is at the memory level, then the good students will get demotivated. Okay, so you have this problem. Therefore, you please spread your questions over at least 3 levels of thinking: memory, application, and critical thinking, where 10% may be at critical thinking level, but 60 to 70%, 50% at application, and maybe 40% at memory level, right? You can have a set like that. If you prepare a set like that, then students will get interested in the subject and also not get demotivated because the paper is tough, right? So you have to balance this out. This is a very important ability a teacher should have, how to set a question paper. At this point, I will pause and take questions if students have, if faculty have any questions, I will take them.
Manju, do
Yes.
they chat? Do they write in the chat box, or can they unmute and ask?
Anything, let them write in the chat box. If you feel that is, that has less inconvenience, then they can do that. Either way is fine. Maybe first you can try chat box to see how many people have questions at this point, or comments. Even comments is fine. So if there are no questions, we'll proceed further.
Right now, there's nothing, sir.
No questions, it seems.
Would anyone like to ask a question? You can unmute yourself and ask.
Hello, sir. Hello.
Yes.
So, sir.
Sir, can you hear me?
Professor Karmarkar, someone's asking you a question.
Yeah.
Hello?
So please tell me whether we should. Yes.
Yeah, so my question is in a mixed class with children with different levels of thinking,
Correct.
on an average, how many questions in each category? Because usually creative or the higher level of thinking might be very few students. So how do we
Yeah.
divide? Say we have 10 questions. What percentage should be a lot to say remember or to
That is
analyze?
what. Yeah. So that is why I have given you some sort of an idea, maybe 30-40% at memory level, and another 40-50% at application level, and maybe 10% at critical thinking, higher level. See, okay, now you will say, but how do I decide something is critical thinking level for my student or not? Because for very bright students, a question which I think is at critical thinking level may be application level for them. So I decide. So that is where what we can do is we can set a paper and based on our experience, assignment set, see how students are answering the assignment. Supposing you find you set some assignment paper, everybody is able to answer all questions. Then it means there is some scope for putting one or two questions, right? Which are at a slightly higher level, so that at least a few students struggle a little bit. Okay, so that is how you can come up to decide. So suppose, for example, examinations. If everybody is scoring more than 70%, then I think I would say question paper is an easy paper, right? On the other hand, if nobody is scoring more than 60%, then I think it is a tough paper for that class, right? So in absolute terms, we cannot decide. This is an important point. In IIT, for instance, this issue comes up, right? You have a mixed class, suppose, of students who are postgraduates and undergraduates. So sometimes what happens is the postgraduate and undergraduate respond differently to the same set of questions. The way out in all these cases is, as I've said, it is good to have a good mass distribution for the class. Not everybody should get more than 70%. And it should not happen that nobody gets more than 70%. That is also not a good questions paper. Maybe a distribution with average around 65, or, maybe 60, average around 60, or 55 maybe. Or I think there is some interference.
Video conference very easily. So Google decided to make
Yes.
it broadly available. Facebook's working on
Jittu George, could you mute yourself, please?
It's broadly available. So needless to say, Zoom has a lot of
Jittu George.
competition coming, and companies are hungry to provide good offerings in this space.
Yeah.
So there are some questions in the chat box.
Yeah.
There's one.
Yeah, sure.
Is there any direct relation between levels of thinking and difficulty levels?
Yes, obviously. Remembering is generally considered easy level. Okay. And application is more difficult. Critical thinking is more difficult. That is why we tried to give an example. We did solve some questions, right, to ourselves feel the various levels of thinking. So dividing a square piece of paper into 4 parts is a very trivial question, right? It almost, it is not even, can't be called as application level. Even if you call application, very low level there. But moment I said divide into 2 parts, it became a little more tricky. And 5 parts, 5 equal squares, it really is a fairly high level thinking question. So remember is lowest level, application is higher level, critical thinking is even higher level.
Dr. Srinaja KK has made a comment. Actually, now most of the questions are up to understand level. And then it is, she's written up to understand level, sudden jump to evaluate, make problems.
Yes. Yeah. So now I will tell you. So this is why I said you must first decide the question paper set for assignments and so on, and then only start thinking. See, what happens is usually we do many times we do other way around. We prepare for classes by reading up books relevant to that class, and then go and teach. And only 1 day or 2 days before the quiz, we decide, we think what questions should be set. So that is not a good approach, right? Depending on what we have taught, we set the questions. That's not a good approach. That is why I have said it is very, very important in my recipe for effective and efficient teaching to first decide all the questions which student should be able to answer after going through my course. And then only you decide then what to teach and how to teach. Okay. So you'll have to give some examples to the students, and you'll have to make them solve problems and help them when they are going, when they are having difficulty. That is what is a tutorial. Right? So you'll have to conduct those sessions, and you'll have to plan your course accordingly. Does that answer your question?
Dr. Srinaja?
Yeah.
Nimmi Narayan asks, is the method of giving notes to students actually beneficial to them?
I would say, see, you are prescribing a textbook. I want to know, the person who has asked question, are you prescribing a textbook? Because textbook is equivalent to notes, right? I mean, some backup is there. I would say that, yeah. So I would say, yeah, I would say that you must encourage the students to take notes. This research has been done, okay, on this issue. And it has been, research has shown that students should be asked to take notes in the class. It is very important. See, just sitting is not good. Whenever students take notes, right, their mind is more exercised. Their engagement with the subject matter and what is being done is better. So you must encourage the students to take notes. That is true. So teacher giving notes to the students, on this I have no particular opinion, because of course, if there is no textbook, please, if there is no textbook you are prescribing, then it may be a good idea to give notes, because students should have some backup, right? I should go back, I should be able to go back and revise. Okay. So apart from asking the student to take notes, if you are not giving any textbook or reference material, then yes, you can give your own notes, which you have used for preparing for your class. You can give. But students should, but one thing, students should be clear about this, that they should not, many times it happens. If you are using PowerPoint, students will not take notes. They will say, anyway, sir will send the PowerPoint slides. Then they will be lazy in the class. So they should be told, I may give you reference material, but you must take notes. In fact, you can spend 5 minutes telling students why they should take notes. See, notes are different for different people, because depending on my own understanding of the subject and my own ideas of which is difficult, which is easy, which is what I know, what I don't know, I will take notes. Teacher is telling something, I think that is easy. I don't think I need to make note of it. It's not so important for me because I know about it already. Okay, then I may not note that. But some other thing, I feel, oh, I didn't know this. Okay, so I should note. For instance, even sitting in this class now, actually it is a good idea to make note of some points. Because whenever you do noting, your engagement with the subject matter is better.
Yes, sir. Yes. Sir, actually, I was asking the other way. That is, sometimes students demand that notes from teachers for the sake of writing exams, scoring marks and all. So what happens is that certain students have a tendency to memorize this and they may score good marks. But I think the higher levels of this learning, you miss that.
Yes, yes. Yeah. So that is why I said, if you are not giving a textbook, giving notes is fine. But if you are giving a text, if there is a textbook available, there is no need separately for notes. I mean, the student should take notes in the class. That is anyway there all the time.
I was telling that should we give notes to students rather than making them to write the notes?
No, see, they should take notes. That's why I answered this question. Students should be asked to take notes, because only then they will be engaged. Otherwise, they will not be engaged in the class. See, whenever I make some action with my hand and so on, right? The reinforcement happens. Whatever point I'm noting, that is getting reinforced in my mind. So retention is better when people take notes. This research has been done on this particular aspect. Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
Dr. Biju Thomas asks, how do we evaluate critical thinking levels?
Yes, it's a very good question. So critical thinking level questions take a long time to answer. Therefore, if you are going to conduct only quizzes of 1 hour or something like that, you cannot set critical thinking level questions. Okay, for in that quiz, because so generally, if you want to test students on critical thinking, you must give sufficient time. So there are people who conduct open time exam. I mean, they can sit for 4 hours or 5 hours. You are not particular about the amount of hours. Then critical thinking questions can be given. If your rules and regulations do not permit you to give open time exam or open book exam, this kind of things, then what you should do is you should give critical thinking level questions only in the assignments. You should not give in the exam. But critical thinking level questions should be given to the students. This is important, because only then they will their higher levels of thinking will be activated. Right? So now what is happening is, in order to make things very easy, we are setting simple questions. Then after coming out of BTech, suddenly practical problems they are supposed to solve, there they have to be creative, critical. It's not possible, because they are not, they have not got into the habit of exercising their mind. Okay, let me make another point here, that supposing you don't give marks for students solving critical thinking, then will students solve a critical thinking question? That's a good point. So you can probably set aside some marks for assignments where you don't bother about the time, right? If you find students are not answering critical thinking level question in assignments, I am saying, you can set aside some marks for that. Any other question?
So, Dr. Anisha asked, the answer to a creative or critical thinking level questions may vary with students.
Yes,
in that
yes.
case, how do we evaluate such answers?
Yeah, it's a very good question. That is why I am saying you need not be particular about evaluation. I have said, if you are setting a question and assignments, you say, okay, those students who are interested, you please solve this question. Tomorrow you come up with answers, and I will give you a chance to present your answers in the class. That is it. You don't have to, don't evaluate. We should not think that everything should be evaluated. Some things may not be evaluated. Okay. I'm not saying critical thinking cannot be evaluated. I'm only saying if you have difficulty, you need not evaluate. But we need not think that unless we evaluate, students will not learn. That is actually not fully correct. In assignments, you can give questions. You will find, in fact, I have done this. Whatever I'm talking about, I have tried myself. See, there will be few students in the class who have intrinsic interest in the subject. They will really like to solve those problems, and they will come with answers to the solution. Maybe one or two. That's fine. But that way you are able to detect who are the students who are very much getting interested in your subject. It's a very nice and simple way to detect. And another thing is, different approaches may be given marks. That is fine. Nothing wrong with that, so long as the answer is correct. But creativity is more difficult. That is why, those who have done research know that you send a paper for for review. One reviewer will say it is good. Another reviewer say, no, I don't think there is much novel thing in it. Right? You know that. So all of us know creativity evaluation is not easy. It is subjective. By nature, it is subjective. So this problem is more acute in arts, in creative fields. Music also. Right? Some music composers have composed songs thinking that their composition is very good, but it has not made an impact on the public. And there are some songs which they spend very little time, but it has become hit. They have, in fact, these interviews are available for composers, music composers, how much time they have spent on hit songs, and it has been found. So in judging creativity, there is an unpredictability, its impact as well as utility, right? So we accept that and we live with it.
Okay,
Dr. Mini KD asks, the application level questions are very important in the practical point of view, right?
Yes. Yes.
Another, Dr. Biju Thomas again asks, how shall an open book test, how can an open textbook exam be designed?
How can it be designed?
Yes.
Just to tell you, some 3 months ago, we did a one-day session on this for a college. Exactly this, how to design questions for open book exam. So it is a big topic, right? It is a big topic. So the thing is, to design questions for open book exam, the teacher has to spend a lot of time. Okay, I will just stop with that because this is where creativity is again involved. Okay. Now, one thing, what you can see is one way you get ideas for open book exam questions is you try to look at practical problems. Practical problems, right? Most of the practical problems, one thing is they require multiple concepts, right, to be integrated. So let me see. I will, okay, just one sec. I will show you one open book exam question. I think that may give you some idea. Okay, what I will do is, that's a good question. See, I have one more session, right? So I will spend time and there is a question paper I have, right? It is taking a little bit of time to locate that question paper. So I will pull out that question and then show you. Okay, beginning of the next session, I will show you that question. Yes, shall we go ahead?
Yes, sir.
Any more questions are there?
No, sir.
Yeah, but this discussion is very important because, as I said, setting good questions is the heart of, good teaching and learning. Okay, so let's proceed further. Be efficient. First, let me check. You are able to see the slide? Are you able to see the slide?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay. To be effective and efficient, a teacher should organize teaching around learning outcomes. So this has already been discussed by Prasad. Learning outcome is a teacher's expectation of the learner performance in a course. It should contain a measurable action verb. The action verb should describe the expected performance from the learner. Okay. So this has been discussed. Fine. Now, let me give you my own experience of using learning outcomes, how it has improved the impact of the teaching on the students. Student gains from specification of learning outcomes and organization of content around them. Okay. So, I used to conduct a session on creativity and problem solving for research scholars, all research scholars of the institute. Their number will be about 300, right? 300 to 400. It depends on which semester. Now, it is a 3-hour session to tell them how to think better, higher levels of thinking required for research and all that. Before I was exposed to the concept of learning outcome, this may be 10 years ago, right? Actually, I was introduced to the concept of learning outcome only when Teaching Learning Center started in IIT Madras, right? So before that, so this is how I used to organize my talk or session. I used to give an outline as follows, that in my 3-hour session, I'm going to talk about levels of thinking, about intelligence and creativity, gift or skill. Is intelligence and creativity gift or skill? Then I would discuss some examples of productive thinking. I will talk about what is scientific thinking. And finally, I end with prescriptions of how to improve your thinking. This is how I used to give the outline of my session. Now, after I was exposed to the concept of learning outcome, I modified my first slide as follows. Same content, okay? But now I am presenting it in a slightly different organization form as follows. At the end of this lecture, you should be able to recognize the various levels of thinking. I go back to the previous slide. Here I used to say, I'm going to discuss levels of thinking. That's all. Here, this is a more specific statement, okay, fitted into the definition of learning outcome. The action verb here is recognize, okay. If you want, you can replace it by identify. That is also another equivalent verb for this, action verb. So I am saying at the end of this lecture, you should be able to recognize the various levels of thinking. You should be able to recognize the difference between thinking skills required for course-based education and research. You should be able to recognize the difference between intelligence and creativity. Then you should be able to recognize the importance of tabular and graphical organization of data in problem solving. I'm going back to the previous slide to show what was the equivalent thing earlier. Earlier I was saying I will talk about intelligence and creativity. Sorry, there is some disturbance. Yeah. Earlier, I would say I will talk about intelligence and creativity. But now, you see that it is more specific. I want my students to recognize the difference between intelligence and creativity at the end of my class. You see, this is a very specific thing for the student, right? To understand what am I supposed to learn out of the discussion. Now, there are several advantages of this description in terms of learning outcomes. I will give you a 15-second break. Break meaning, please read all the outcomes, learning outcomes on the slide. So I will use Dr. Manju as a test. You have read the slide. You have been able to read the slide.
Yes, sir.
Okay, fine. So we'll proceed. Now let me tell you the advantage of framing content around learning outcome, right? So earlier, for example, when I used to say that, I'm handling a session on creativity and problem solving, many people used to be skeptical. They used to say, what is the use of this, discussing this? Are you saying that after 3 hours, people will become great creative thinkers and they'll be able to solve problems? If it is so simple, right? Just 3-hour session and you make people great creative thinkers and problem solvers and so on, right? So I feel there is not much use of this kind of discussions. Sometimes people skeptically, they used to say. Then I used to explain to them, look, I am not claiming that at the end of 3 hours, my students will become creative thinkers. That is not my claim at all. It is like saying, I am going to give a lecture on how to reduce your weight. Okay. And it is not fair to ask at the end of my lecture, will everybody have reduced their weight? No. They have to put into practice those ideas, then only weight will be reduced. So what is the goal of a lecture on effortless weight loss? It is to give people a plan, a practical plan of how they can reduce their weight. Similarly, creativity and problem solving, a discussion of this topic for 3 hours, what is it meant for? We are not saying in 3 hours you will develop the thinking. We are saying in 3 hours you will be able to recognize what is good thinking. Unless you are able to recognize and you know these various ideas, how will you develop the thinking in yourself? So this description on this slide is not clear as to what will be achieved at the end of this lecture, right? Whereas this slide, where I am putting everything in terms of learning outcome, people will not be skeptical. For instance, you are saying at the end of my lecture, you will be able to recognize the difference between intelligence and creativity. People will say, yeah, I think that is possible, right? At the end of a 3-hour session, people will know what is the meaning of creativity, what is intelligence. Similarly, they will be able to recognize the various levels of thinking. It is not fair to say, I am not using the word develop, I am using the word recognize. So that is the advantage of learning outcome framing. It is very clear as to what level of skill will the students develop at the end of the particular session that you are conducting. Okay. Now, let me give you some statistics. How did the students respond to this? So, rating of the lecture on a 10-point scale by 400 research scholars of IITM drawn from 16 departments. I used to take this rating even before I was exposed to the concept of learning outcome. So here is one rating that I have got just before I changed my lecture, reorganized it around learning outcomes. So rating used to be 8.08. Now, same lecture, once I organized around learning outcomes and specified the learning outcomes to the students, the rating went up to 8.74. Okay. And further, I have not given you the final rating. I mean, further improvement from feedback and reflection, it went above 9. Okay. So that is why I have a personal experience of improvement in student response or student engagement in the class when you tell them learning outcomes for your session and organize your teaching around learning outcomes. Okay. So it is not something theoretical. This really works in practice. Now, to deliver content effectively, a teacher must have communication skills. That is the next topic, right? See, let me go back and tell you what is a recipe. I'm going step by step. So begin by designing questions, assignments, write learning outcomes, organize content around learning outcomes. We have come up to this content delivery now. That is where we are going into. Okay. So even next session is there. So other points will get covered one by one. So now let's talk about communication skills. Let me see what is the time now. So
3:27.
Yeah. So we have a few minutes. Let me just introduce this topic. How do you decide whether a person has good communication skills? There is a very nice simple quotation. It says, you never truly understand something until you can explain it to your grandmother. When can you claim that you have understood something well? If you can explain it to your grandmother. What it means is, if I can explain my idea to a non-specialist who is not familiar with my subject, then only I can claim to have a good understanding. Now, we can extend it to communication skill also. You can say that you can claim to have a good communication skill if you can explain your ideas to your grandmother. Okay, so that is a test of good communication. How do we explain things to a non-specialist? Okay. Let me introduce the factors governing effectiveness of communication. I would like people to respond on the chat. How many of you have seen this particular figure? A circle, 38%, 55%, 7%, these numbers, and body language, how you speak words. This picture that I am talking about, this circle and this. Please respond on the chat and say yes if you have seen. Let's see how many people are responding. Have you got any responses?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
How many?
About 3-4 people have said no. Everyone else thinks yes.
Oh, so if that is good, if all of you know it already, then I did not spend much time in discussing. I will just mention the key points here. So what is the key thing here? It says that 55% of the impact you make. Now, this is not applicable for online session that we are conducting now because I am not visible to you at all. I will not say not at all visible. Okay, my face is visible, so not my entire body, just the face. So yeah, some part of the body language is being seen. You are able to see my face and so on, right? But supposing we take a normal situation where a speaker is visible to the audience, then the impact the speaker makes, 55% of that impact will be due to body language. Okay, 38% of the impact will depend on how you speak. So in online sessions, for example, how you speak will become very, very important. Apart from your face. See, face is not becoming important in online because it is being reduced. The size of the, your face is not fully covering the screen. So that is why body language is not becoming so important in online teaching. Now, only 7% of the impact is due to words. This is a key point every teacher should know. If spoken message and body language are contradictory, audience gives more weight to the body language. Okay? So, let me just end with an example. I mean, end meaning for today's session. I'm going to continue this topic of communication skill. How body language is, more important. Okay, let me put what is the body language first of all. So body language includes your posture, gestures and movement, facial expression, eye contact and orientation. Are you facing the audience or you are not facing the audience, right? You are facing to the door or to the wall, dress or appearance, and your proximity and orientation to the audience. All this together is what is body language. How you speak, 4 factors are important. Pace of your speech, where do you pause in your speech, what is the pitch of your voice, and your pronunciation. Okay, so these 4 things are important. These 4 P's: P, pace, pause, pitch, pronunciation. These are important. So this is what is how you speak. Okay, I think we have just crossed 3:30, so I think I will pause here and I will continue in the next session. Is that fine, Dr. Manju?
Yes, sir. You have asked for a participant to make a presentation.
Yes, so that I will see, that we will do tomorrow.
Okay. Anyway, she was ready today also. She will be ready tomorrow also.
Yeah.
So there is a question for you in the chat box.
Okay.
Neeraja James asked, for e-learning, this is not necessary, right? The words and information is more important.
How you speak is still very important. How you speak, your pace, pause, pitch, pronunciation is very important in online teaching. Right? You are right. Body language is going away, right? That is true. Still, facial expression little bit, it might matter, but I would still, because people are able to see the face. But I agree that this is not. So, how you speak is very important. Supposing, I will tell you, supposing I speak very fast, okay, you will not be able to sit through the lecture. On the other hand, if I am very slow, then also it will be, after lunch and so on, it will be very difficult. So this pace is a very important thing. Similarly, pause. Okay, that is, do you pause between 2 sentences? Or if you want to emphasize some word, then do you pause before and after that word? Because moment you pause, introduce pauses, you put pauses on either side of a word or a set of words, then that word or set of words acquires importance in the mind of the audience. So these things are very important. That is why we'll have we should have an actual presentation to discuss these points. That is why I said that there will be an activity. Somebody will present, and then we can have a discussion on this. Yeah. No, but let me know whether you got some answer to your question. You asked me.
She writes, sure, sir.
Yeah.
So, sir, tomorrow's session starts with the presentation?
Yes, we'll start with the presentation because this is the thing that we want to discuss.
Okay.
Yeah. So I would have ended with the presentation today, but interaction time and so on, it matters. So yeah. We spent a little more time than I thought on the questions, but it is fine because that is important.
Okay. So participants, is there any question or anything to interact with? So it seems, sir, there is no questions.
Okay. So you will be giving the feedback, right? They should immediately.
Yes.
That they should complete.
Yeah, the feedback form is posted. They can fill in the form and I will send it to you.
Sure. Yeah. So I myself felt that today we handled the questions with less interruption because, we learned from yesterday's session, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
We are all learning by doing, sir.
Yes. So that is why the feedback is important.
Yeah. So shall we end the session?
Yeah, we can end the session.
My name is. Hello?
Yeah.
Dr. Mani.
Can you hear?
Yes.
Okay. Respected Professor Karmalkar, dear participants and the entire team IQAC, the session was really active and very interactive. Sir, you made us walk through the spheres of formulation of questions, setting of question paper, significance of creativity and high level of thinking in framing questions, everything. Definitely, we will experiment your recipe in our classroom situation, sir. On behalf of IQAC of Sri Shankara College, Kaladi, I extend my heartfelt gratitude to Professor Sripath Karmalkar as he took a very sincere effort in transforming each one of us different. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you.